The morning had started like any other for Special Agent Anthony Wilson. A quick breakfast, a kiss goodbye to his wife, and the familiar drive to the FBI field office in the heart of the city. 15 years with the Bureau's Financial Crimes Division had established a comfortable routine, one that Anthony had come to appreciate after years of unpredictable fieldwork. What he couldn't have known was that by lunchtime, his world would be turned upside down. The call to report to Deputy Director Chen's office came just as Anthony was reviewing evidence for the Thompson corruption case, a high-profile investigation involving several city officials and a prominent real estate developer. The case had already resulted in 2 arrests, with more expected as the evidence mounted. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Anthony stood in the doorway, noticing immediately that Chen wasn't alone. 2 detectives from the local police department sat facing the desk, their expressions unreadable. Chen gestured for Anthony to enter. "Please close the door and take a seat, Agent Wilson." The atmosphere in the room felt heavy, charged with an uncomfortable tension that made the hairs on Anthony's neck stand up. He recognized one of the detectives, Officer Reynolds, from a joint task force several years back. The other, Officer Decker, was unfamiliar but wore the same stony expression as his partner. "These officers have brought a serious matter to my attention," Chen began, his voice carefully neutral. "Evidence from the Thompson case has gone missing from the secure storage facility." Anthony frowned. "Missing? What exactly are we talking about?" "The financial records seized from Thompson's home office," Decker cut in before Chen could respond, "along with approximately $40,000 in cash that was cataloged as evidence. And this concerns me because," Anthony asked, though a sinking feeling was already forming in his stomach. Reynolds leaned forward. "We have a witness who saw you accessing the evidence room yesterday evening, outside of standard protocol." The accusation hung in the air for a moment before Anthony responded. "I did access the evidence room yesterday to review the financial records for my report. Everything was properly signed out and returned. Standard procedure." He turned to Chen. "You can verify that in the log." "We did," Chen confirmed. "But the records and cash were discovered missing during this morning's inventory check." Anthony shook his head. "That's impossible. Everything was there when I left." "Our witness, Decker," continued as if Anthony hadn't spoken, "claims you were seen placing items into your personal bag before leaving." "That's a lie," Anthony said firmly. "Who is this witness?" "We're not at liberty to disclose that information," Reynolds replied with the ghost of a smile. Anthony looked between the 2 officers, understanding dawning slowly. He'd heard rumors about Reynolds and Decker, complaints filed by minority officers, allegations of evidence tampering that never stuck, cases that mysteriously fell apart when certain defendants were involved. "This is ridiculous," he said. "I've been with the Bureau for 15 years. My record is clean." "Everyone's record is clean until it isn't," Decker remarked. "The fact is the evidence is missing, and you were the last person to access it." Anthony turned to Chen. "Sir, you know me. This is clearly some kind of mistake or something else." He chose his words carefully, aware of the thin ice he was treading. Chen's expression remained professional but troubled. "I've worked with Agent Wilson for 7 years," he told the officers. "He's one of our most respected agents. I find these accusations difficult to believe." "With all due respect," Reynolds said, not sounding respectful at all. "Corrupt cops rarely announce their intentions beforehand. We've seen it all. Decorated officers, community leaders, people above suspicion." His eyes fixed on Anthony. "Sometimes the ones who look the most trustworthy are the ones you should watch closest." Anthony felt a flash of anger. "I didn't take anything. Period. We've obtained a warrant to search your home and—" "Vehicle," Decker interrupted, pulling a folded document from his jacket pocket. "Based on our witness statement and your access to the missing evidence." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "A warrant? Already? That's not possible unless—" Anthony stopped, the pieces clicking together. "Unless you already had it prepared. This isn't an investigation, it's a setup." Chen took the warrant from Decker, reviewing it carefully. His frown deepened as he handed it back. "This appears to be an order. but I want to state for the record that the FBI will be conducting its own internal investigation into this matter." "Noted," Reynolds said dismissively. "In the meantime, Agent Wilson will need to surrender his badge and weapon pending the outcome of our search." Anthony stood frozen, unable to quite process what was happening. In 15 years of service, through dangerous operations and high-stakes cases, he had never once been accused of impropriety, let alone theft or corruption. Now, in the span of 10 minutes, he was being stripped of everything that defined his professional identity. "Anthony," Chen said gently, "I'll need your credentials and service weapon." Moving like a man underwater, Anthony unclipped his badge and removed his gun from its holster, placing them on Chen's desk. The weight of the moment crushed down on him as his fingertips lingered on the badge. "This is temporary," Chen assured him, though his eyes betrayed uncertainty. "Until we get to the bottom of this. We'll escort you home for the search," Decker said, standing. "You're not under arrest at this time, but I suggest you cooperate fully." Anthony nodded stiffly. "Of course I'll cooperate. I have nothing to hide." As they left Chen's office, Anthony felt the stares of his colleagues. Word traveled fast in the building, and the sight of an agent being escorted by local police told its own story. He kept his head high, meeting the confused gazes of people he'd worked alongside for years. Lisa from Cybercrimes stepped forward as they passed. "Anthony, what's going on?" Before he could answer, Reynolds stepped between them. "Keep moving, Agent Wilson." "It's a mistake," Anthony managed to tell her as they continued down the hallway. "Call Vanessa for me." The drive to his house passed in tense silence. Anthony sat in the back of Reynolds's car, watching familiar streets blur past the window, trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding around him. His mind raced through the previous day's events. He had accessed the evidence room around 4:30 p.m., spent about an hour reviewing the financial records, and returned everything before leaving. The sign-out log would show that there had been 2 other agents in the evidence room while he was there. Porter from organized crime and someone from the drugs division whose name he couldn't recall. As they pulled into his driveway, Anthony saw his neighbor Tom watering plants, watching curiously as the police car stopped. Anthony gave him a small nod, trying to appear calm despite the circumstances. "Nice neighborhood," Decker commented as they got out of the car. "Expensive houses for a government salary." "My wife's a surgeon," Anthony replied flatly. "And we bought during the market crash in 2008. Reynolds smirked. "Convenient." Inside the house, Anthony stood in his living room, watching as the officers prepared to tear through his life. The home he and Vanessa had built together over 12 years of marriage, the photos on the walls, the books on the shelves, the memories in every corner, all about to be invaded by strangers who had already decided he was guilty. "I need to call my wife," Anthony said. "She should know what's happening." Decker nodded reluctantly. "Keep it brief. Speaker on." The call connected after 3 rings. "Hey, babe. What's up?" Vanessa's voice was bright, unaware of the storm that had engulfed their lives. "Van," Anthony said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I need you to listen carefully. There's been an accusation at work. Some evidence has gone missing and they're saying I took it." There was a moment of shocked silence before Vanessa responded. "That's absurd. Who's saying this?" "2 detectives from local PD. They're at our house now with a search warrant." Anthony glanced at Reynolds and Decker, who were watching him closely. "I need you to call Jack. Tell him what's happening." Jack Holland was an old friend from law school who had become one of the city's top defense attorneys. "Anthony, this is crazy," Vanessa said, her voice rising. "You've never—" "I know," he cut in gently. "But it's happening. They're going to search the house. I didn't do anything wrong, so they won't find anything. But we need Jack just in case." After assuring Vanessa once more that everything would be okay, Anthony ended the call. The look on Decker's face, a mixture of amusement and contempt, made his stomach turn. "Shall we get started?" Reynolds asked, pulling on latex gloves with theatrical slowness. As they began methodically moving through his home, Anthony stood in the center of his living room, feeling strangely disconnected from the scene. 15 years of building trust, solving cases, and serving justice, and it had taken less than an hour for it all to be questioned. But somewhere beneath the shock and disbelief, a spark of determination flickered to life. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone with access to the evidence room, connections to these officers, and a reason to want Anthony removed from the Thompson case. 3 days had passed since the search of Anthony's home, 3 days of administrative leave that felt more like exile. The detectives had found nothing incriminating during their search, a fact that seemed to frustrate rather than reassure them. But instead of clearing his name, the lack of evidence had only led to more invasive scrutiny. Anthony sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by notes and printouts. His laptop screen glowed with personnel files he shouldn't have access to, courtesy of his former partner, Agent Diana Rodriguez, who still believed in him. "You shouldn't have sent me these," Anthony had told her during their clandestine meeting at a quiet corner table in a coffee shop far from the office. Diana had simply shrugged, stirring her latte. "Probably not. But I know you, Tony. 15 years working together counts for something, and what they're doing doesn't add up." Now, studying the documents, Anthony began to see patterns emerge. Reynolds and Decker had been involved in at least 7 cases where evidence mysteriously disappeared. In 5 of those instances, the officers had personally accused minority colleagues of theft or tampering. 2 officers had resigned rather than fight the charges. 1 had been fired. Another was still on suspension after 8 months with no resolution. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Jack Holland, his attorney friend. "I've been digging," Jack said without preamble. "Your buddies Reynolds and Decker have quite the reputation in the department. Untouchable is the word that keeps coming up." "Untouchable how?" Anthony asked, reaching for a pen. "They've had 9 formal complaints filed against them in the last 4 years. Racial profiling, excessive force, evidence mishandling. Not one has stuck. Each time the complaint either gets withdrawn or witnesses suddenly change their stories." Anthony frowned. "That suggests protection from someone with influence." "Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Guess who heads the police commission that oversees internal investigations? Tell me. Victor Thompson's brother-in-law. The same Thompson you've been building a case against." Anthony sat back, the pieces beginning to align. "The corruption case I'm working on involves real estate developer Victor Thompson. We've been investigating kickbacks to city officials for zoning changes that made him millions. Well, Thompson's got deep connections throughout the city government. His wife's brother, Commissioner Harrison, has final say on all police disciplinary matters. And I heard through back channels that Reynolds and Decker were assigned to Harrison's personal security detail 2 years ago." Anthony jotted down the connections, a clearer picture forming. "So Thompson learns we're closing in. He reaches out to his brother-in-law, who activates his loyal officers to derail the investigation by taking out the lead agent, me." "It fits," Jack agreed. "But proving it is another matter entirely." After ending the call, Anthony paced the kitchen, restless energy building. The case against Thompson had been strong. Financial records showing suspicious payments, witness testimony from a former assistant, and property documents revealing a pattern of city officials approving projects immediately after receiving consulting fees from Thompson's shell companies. If those records disappeared, years of work would be compromised. His phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Meeting in 30? Usual spot. Have news." The usual spot was a bench overlooking the river in Jefferson Park, far enough from both their homes and the office to avoid accidental encounters with colleagues. By the time Anthony arrived, Diana was already there, feeding crumbs to eager pigeons. "You look terrible," she greeted him, sliding over to make room. "Haven't been sleeping much," he admitted, settling beside her. "What's the news?" Diana glanced around before speaking. "2 things. First, I heard Reynolds bragging to another officer about how they're going to find something during their follow-up search tomorrow." Anthony's head snapped up. "Follow-up search? They already searched my house. Apparently they've convinced a judge that the initial search was rushed due to your intimidating FBI presence. They're coming back tomorrow morning with a more comprehensive warrant." Cold anger settled in Anthony's stomach. "They didn't find anything because there's nothing to find unless they plant something." Diana finished his thought. "Which brings me to the second piece of news. I was reviewing security footage from the evidence room for the day in question. There's a 20-minute gap in the recording. A gap? That's not possible. The system is designed specifically to prevent tampering. Diana nodded grimly. Exactly. Someone with high-level access cleared that section of footage. But they missed something. The backup system maintained by IT captures door access logs independently of the video system. During those missing 20 minutes, guess who entered the evidence room? Reynolds and Decker, Anthony guessed. Reynolds and a man in a suit I didn't recognize. Not Decker. I'm running facial recognition, but it's taking time without raising flags. Anthony processed this information, so they removed the evidence themselves during that window, then accused me since I had legitimate access earlier. That's my theory, Diana confirmed. But we need proof. Solid, undeniable proof before they try to plant evidence in your home. Anthony fell silent, thinking through options. After a moment, he looked up with new resolve. I installed a security system last year after that case with the militia group. Full coverage. Interior, exterior, motion-activated recording. Diana raised an eyebrow. Does it store footage off-site? Cloud backup, plus a secondary physical storage in a hidden location. If they plant anything, we'll have them on video. That's good, Diana said. But it's reactive. We need something proactive, too. She hesitated before continuing. I have a contact in the DA's office. If we bring her what we've found so far about the connection to Thompson, she might be able to delay the search warrant while investigating. Anthony shook his head. Too risky. If Thompson has reach into the police commission, he might have friends in the DA's office, too. We can't know who to trust yet. They sat in thoughtful silence, watching the river flow past. Finally, Anthony spoke again. I need to let them come tomorrow. Let them think their plan is working. But I want you to follow Reynolds. He's the weaker link of the two. If he's carrying evidence to plant, he'll have to get it from somewhere first. That's dangerous, Tony. If they catch you monitoring them... I won't be monitoring them, Anthony clarified. I'll be home being the cooperative suspect. You'll be the one following Reynolds. Diana looked unconvinced. I don't like it. There are too many ways this could go wrong. We don't have much choice. They're moving fast, which means they're worried about something. The Thompson case is close to breaking open. That's why they're desperate to discredit me now. Eventually, Diana reluctantly agreed to the plan. They spent the next hour coordinating details, then parted ways as the park began filling with afternoon joggers and families. Back home, Anthony found Vanessa waiting in the living room, her expression tense. I heard from a colleague at the hospital, she said as soon as he entered. People are talking, Anthony. Someone's spreading rumors that you were on the take. Anthony sank onto the couch beside her. I'm sorry you're being dragged into this. I don't care about gossip, she said firmly. I care about you. What did Diana say? He explained the situation, watching Vanessa's expression shift from concern to anger. So they're coming back tomorrow to plant evidence? In our home? Her voice sharpened. Absolutely not. We should call the FBI director, go public, something. We can't, Anthony said gently. Not yet. Going public without proof makes me look desperate. Calling leadership without evidence could backfire if Thompson has influence there too. So we just let them walk in and frame you? Vanessa stood pacing the room. There has to be another option. Anthony reached for her hand, pulling her back beside him. We have the security system. If they plant anything, we'll have video proof. And if they find and disable the system, the main controls are visible, but I installed secondary cameras they won't know about, Anthony assured her. Plus the off-site backup. Trust me, I designed it specifically to protect us from people who know what they're doing. Vanessa squeezed his hand. I do trust you. I just hate that we have to go through this at all. That night, they prepared the house meticulously. Anthony verified all cameras were functioning and adjusted angles to ensure maximum coverage. Vanessa suggested small, nearly invisible marks on drawers and cabinets most likely to be searched. Subtle ways to prove if items had been moved or planted. As they finally went to bed, Anthony lay awake, mind racing through scenarios. In his 15 years with the FBI, he had faced down-armed suspects, infiltrated dangerous organizations, and unraveled complex financial crimes. But this was different. The enemy now wore badges like his own and operated within the system he had sworn to uphold. Tomorrow would be a gamble. If Reynolds and Decker simply conducted a legitimate search, they would again find nothing incriminating. But Anthony knew better. Men like that, protected by powerful interests, wouldn't risk their careers on an accusation unless they were confident they could make it stick. They were coming to plant evidence, and when they did, Anthony would be ready. Morning arrived with a sense of inevitable confrontation. Anthony had been awake since 5, reviewing his security system one last time and texting brief updates to Diana. She'd positioned herself near Reynolds' apartment building at dawn, ready to follow him when he left. By 7:30, Vanessa had reluctantly departed for the hospital, a necessary alibi that would keep her safely away from whatever was about to unfold. She'd kissed Anthony goodbye with worried eyes. "Be careful," she'd whispered. "Don't give them any reason to escalate this." "I won't," he promised. Just a calm, cooperative homeowner with nothing to hide. Now, waiting in his living room with a cold cup of coffee, Anthony's phone buzzed with a message from Diana. "Reynolds left home 7:45. Made stop at police storage facility. Now heading your direction with small package. Decker meeting him at your house with 3 additional officers." The show of force wasn't surprising. They wanted to intimidate him, create an atmosphere where he'd be too overwhelmed to notice subtle movements or sleight of hand. Standard procedure for planting evidence. Distract the suspect with excessive activity, while the real operation happens quietly elsewhere. Anthony sent a quick acknowledgement to Diana, then activated his home system's silent recording mode. The visible cameras would appear to be functioning normally, but the hidden secondary system would now be capturing everything without any indicator lights or on-screen notifications. The doorbell rang at precisely 8 o'clock. Anthony took a deep breath, settled his expression into neutral compliance, and opened the door. Reynolds and Decker stood at the front, flanked by 3 uniformed officers Anthony didn't recognize. All wore latex gloves. 2 carried large equipment cases. "Agent Wilson," Decker said flatly, holding up a document. "We have a warrant for a comprehensive follow-up search of your property. Some areas were insufficiently examined during our initial visit." Anthony accepted the warrant, scanning it carefully. "This appears to cover areas already searched." "We have reason to believe the initial search was compromised," Reynolds said, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Step aside, please." Anthony moved back, allowing the group to enter. "I have nothing to hide. Search whatever you want." One of the uniformed officers remained with Anthony in the living room while the others spread throughout the house. From his position, Anthony could observe most of their movements in the main areas. Reynolds disappeared down the hallway toward the home office, the most likely location to plant evidence related to the Thompson case. "How long have you been with the Bureau?" the young officer asked, clearly uncomfortable with his babysitting assignment. 15 years, Anthony replied, keeping his voice conversational. "You're new to the force, aren't you?" "I don't remember seeing you around before," the officer nodded. 8 months in. First time I've been part of a search at an FBI agent's house." He lowered his voice slightly. "Did you really take evidence from a case?" Anthony met his eyes steadily. "No. And they won't find anything to suggest I did." The young officer seemed about to say something else when shouting erupted from the direction of the office. "Wilson, get in here!" Decker's voice carried through the house. Anthony moved calmly toward his office, the young officer following close behind. As they entered, he found Decker standing by the bookshelf, holding a sealed evidence bag containing what appeared to be cash and documents. "Care to explain this?" Decker asked, his face a mask of exaggerated triumph. Anthony looked at the evidence bag, then directly at Reynolds, who stood in the corner, arms crossed and smiling. "I can't explain what wasn't there yesterday. Playing dumb won't help you now," Decker said. "This is the missing evidence from the Thompson case, hidden behind books on your shelf." The young officer shifted uncomfortably behind Anthony. "Sir, I don't understand. That section was cleared during the first search. I reviewed the photos myself during briefing." Decker shot him a warning glance. "Officer Clark, wait outside. But protocol says, outside now." Reynolds cut in sharply. After Clark reluctantly left, Decker turned back to Anthony. "As I was saying, we've found the missing evidence in your possession. That's a federal offense." Anthony maintained his calm. "That evidence wasn't here during your first search, and it wasn't here when I left for coffee 2 hours ago. The only people who've been near that shelf since then are in this room right now. Are you accusing officers of the law of planting evidence?" Reynolds stepped forward, his face hardening. "That's a serious allegation, Wilson. No more serious than theft and corruption, Anthony replied evenly. Which is exactly what's happening here. Decker pulled out handcuffs. Anthony Wilson, you're under arrest for theft of federal evidence, obstruction of justice, and interfering with an ongoing investigation. Anthony didn't resist as Decker cuffed him. His mind was cataloging details. The exact location where the evidence was found, the positioning of Reynolds and Decker, the reactions of the other officers. Most importantly, he knew his security system had captured everything. As they led him through the living room, Officer Clark stood by the front door, confusion evident on his face. The two other officers avoided eye contact entirely. Your wife will need to be questioned as well, Reynolds added as they approached the police car, as a potential accomplice. It was a calculated jab designed to provoke an emotional response. Anthony recognized the tactic and refused to engage. My attorney will meet me at the station. I have nothing else to say until then. The drive to the police station was tense and silent. Anthony watched familiar streets pass by, mentally reviewing next steps. Diana would have observed Reynolds retrieving whatever he'd planted. The security footage would show the actual planting. Between those two pieces of evidence, they had a solid foundation to fight back. At the station, Anthony was processed efficiently. Fingerprints photographed, personal items cataloged and stored. He was placed in an interview room rather than a cell, a small courtesy likely due to his FBI status. Jack arrived 30 minutes later, briefcase in hand and expression grim. They're saying they found the missing evidence hidden in your office, Jack said after the door closed behind him. Planted, Anthony confirmed. Reynolds brought something from police storage this morning. Diana followed him and saw it. Then during the search, they found it behind books on my shelf, a shelf they already searched days ago. Jack nodded. And you have proof? Home security system caught everything. Hidden cameras with off-site backup. Diana should be retrieving the footage now. Relief flickered across Jack's face. That changes things. But we need to move carefully. If they realize you have them on video, they might try to get ahead of it, claim the footage was tampered with. So what's our play? For now, we say nothing about the footage. Let them build their case on planted evidence. Meanwhile, Diana takes what she has to FBI internal affairs, not local police. The Bureau will want to protect their own, especially with evidence of police corruption. Anthony considered this approach. They'll charge me before that happens. Probably, Jack acknowledged. But with your record and the flimsy nature of their evidence, we can get reasonable bail. Once we're in court, we reveal the footage and turn the tables. Their strategy session was interrupted when the door opened, and a uniformed officer Anthony didn't recognize entered. Holland, he addressed Jack. Your client has a phone call from Internal Affairs, Jack frowned. That's unusual protocol, the officer shrugged. Unusual situation. An FBI agent accused of theft tends to shake things up. In the small communication room, Anthony accepted the phone with cautious optimism. Wilson, he answered. Anthony, it's Diana. Her voice was tight with urgency. I've got good news and complicated news. I'm listening. Good news first, I followed. Reynolds to the storage facility and recorded him retrieving what looks like the same evidence bag they found at your house. Already forwarded that to Deputy Director Chen. And the complicated news. Diana hesitated. I accessed your security footage. It clearly shows Reynolds planting the evidence while Decker created a distraction in the kitchen. But here's where it gets interesting. I ran facial recognition on the footage from the evidence room. The 20-minute gap I told you about. Anthony waited, sensing whatever came next would change everything. The man with Reynolds wasn't some random accomplice. It was Commissioner Harrison himself, Thompson's brother-in-law. They're all connected, just like you suspected. Anthony processed this revelation. That's bigger than me being framed. That's conspiracy reaching the top of the police department. Exactly. Chen's bringing in Assistant Director Porter from Washington. They're treating this as a major corruption case now, not just an evidence theft. But Anthony, Diana paused. Thompson has friends everywhere. Until Porter arrives with federal marshals, you need to be extremely careful. These people have everything to lose now. As if on cue, the door to the communication room opened. Reynolds stood there instead of the previous officer, his expression unreadable. Time's up, Wilson. Back to interrogation. The FBI field office felt both familiar and strange to Anthony. Just days ago, he'd walked these same corridors as a respected agent. Now he sat in a conference room, still technically in custody, though his handcuffs had been removed as soon as they'd left the police station. Deputy Director Chen sat across from him, reviewing footage from Anthony's home security system on a laptop. The video clearly showed Reynolds pulling an evidence bag from inside his jacket and placing it behind the books while Decker created a diversion in another room. "This is unambiguous," Chen said, finally looking up. "Combined with Agent Rodriguez's surveillance footage of Reynolds retrieving the package from police storage, we have a solid case for evidence tampering and false accusation." Anthony nodded, relief washing over him. "What about the connection to Commissioner Harrison and Victor Thompson?" "That's where things get complicated." Chen closed the laptop. "Assistant Director Porter is flying in from Washington. This has escalated beyond a simple frame job. We're looking at potential corruption through multiple levels of city government." The door opened and Diana entered with a flash drive. Her professional demeanor cracked momentarily as she gave Anthony a quick smile of reassurance. "Sir," she addressed Chen, "I've compiled everything we have so far. Security footage from Anthony's home, my surveillance of Reynolds, and the evidence room footage showing Commissioner Harrison accessing the Thompson case materials during the system blackout." Chen accepted the drive. "Good work, Rodriguez. What about the backups of the evidence? Do we have anything from the Thompson case still intact?" "That's the good news," Diana said, her expression brightening. "Standard protocol for high-profile cases includes weekly digital backups to the Bureau's secure server. We have complete copies of all financial records up to 3 days before the theft. We've lost the physical evidence, but we have enough to continue building the case." Anthony felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Years of investigation hadn't been completely undone after all. "There's more," Diana continued. "After reviewing the financial records, I found a pattern of payments from Thompson's shell companies. Not just to city officials we already knew about, but to a security consulting firm owned by Reynolds' brother. Over $2 million in the past 18 months. Chen's eyebrows rose. "That connects the dots rather definitively." "One more thing," Diana added, hesitating slightly. "Officer Clark, the young officer from this morning's search, contacted me. He was uncomfortable with what happened and wants to make a statement. Apparently Reynolds and Decker have a reputation in the department for targeting minority officers who get assigned to cases involving certain high-profile citizens." "Including Thompson," Anthony said. "Pieces continuing to fall into place, exactly." Clark said at least 3 officers were forced out after being accused of evidence tampering or misconduct. All were working cases that touched on Thompson's business interests. Chen stood, decision made. "We move on this immediately. Rodriguez, get Clark's statement officially recorded. I want protective custody for him and his family. These people have already shown they'll go to extreme measures. Wilson, you'll remain here under protective watch until we've secured the key players." "With respect, sir," Anthony interjected. "I'd like to be part of this operation. This is my case, both professionally and personally now." Chen considered him for a moment. "You're still technically suspended pending investigation." "Then unsuspend me," Anthony said simply. "You have evidence I was framed." After a brief internal struggle, Chen nodded. "Conditionally reinstated, effective immediately. But your support only. No direct confrontations with Reynolds or Decker." Within hours, the field office transformed into an operational command center. Assistant Director Porter arrived with a team of specialized agents from the Public Corruption Unit. Maps of the city displayed properties owned by Thompson. Financial flowcharts showed the movement of money between his companies and various officials. Anthony stood before the evidence board, adding notes about Reynolds and Decker's involvement in previous cases where evidence had mysteriously disappeared. "Building quite the picture," Porter commented, joining him. The assistant director was a tall woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Chen briefed me on your ordeal. Impressive how you handled it." "Thank you, ma'am," Anthony replied. "But I got lucky. If I hadn't installed that security system after the militia threats last year—" "That wasn't luck," Porter corrected him. "That was foresight. Good agents prepare for contingencies. Great agents prepare for contingencies they hope never happen." A commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Jack Holland had arrived, bringing with him a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit. "This is Gregory Palmer," Jack announced to the room, former financial controller for Thompson Development. "He's ready to talk about everything. Kickbacks, bribes, evidence tampering, all of it." Porter moved toward the unexpected witness. Mr. Palmer, your timing is impeccable. We were just building our case. I saw the news about an FBI agent being set up, Palmer said, his voice tight with anxiety. I knew it had to be about the Thompson investigation. When they're willing to frame federal agents, nobody's safe. As Palmer was escorted to a secure interview room, Anthony felt his phone vibrate with a text from Vanessa. Heard you've been reinstated. So proud of you. Stay safe. Love you. A simple message that reminded him what he was fighting for. Not just his career or reputation, but the life and family he'd built. He typed back a quick response. Almost over. Home soon. Love you too. The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity. Palmer's testimony provided crucial details about Thompson's operation. He confirmed the connection between Thompson, Commissioner Harrison, and the corrupt officers. More importantly, he brought documents, backup copies of financial records he'd secretly maintained as insurance when he began to fear Thompson's methods. By evening, they had enough evidence for multiple arrest warrants. Director Porter gathered the team for a final briefing. We move simultaneously on all targets at HOA 600 tomorrow. Thompson, Harrison, Reynolds, Decker, and 7 other individuals identified as part of this conspiracy. Given the high-profile nature and the fact that some targets have law enforcement connections, we'll coordinate with trusted elements of local SWAT and state police. She turned to Anthony. Wilson, I want you on the Thompson arrest. You built the original case. You should see it through. Thank you, ma'am, Anthony said, surprised by the assignment. Just stay behind the tactical team, she added with a knowing look. This is about justice, not revenge. As the briefing concluded and teams dispersed to prepare, Diana approached Anthony with a tablet. You should see this, she said, showing him a news website. Someone leaked details about corrupt officers framing an FBI agent. The story's everywhere now. Anthony scanned the headlines. FBI agent framed by corrupt officers. Corruption probe expands. Police commissioner under investigation in evidence tampering scandal. This changes things, Anthony mused. They can't quietly make this go away now. That's not all, Diana added, swiping to another screen. Officer Clark wasn't the only one to come forward. 3 former officers who were forced out after being targeted by Reynolds and Decker have contacted the Bureau offering statements. The dam is breaking, Anthony said. More like it already broke, Diana corrected. Check your email. The police union just issued a statement distancing themselves from Reynolds and Decker, calling for full transparency and accountability. Anthony couldn't help a grim smile. Nothing like a public scandal to help people find their moral compass. As night fell, Anthony was given a small office to rest in before the early morning operation. Sleep seemed impossible with tomorrow's arrest looming, but he needed to be sharp. He reclined in the office chair, allowing himself a moment to process everything. Just as he was drifting off, a sharp knock at the door jolted him awake. Chen entered looking troubled. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Reynolds and Decker have disappeared. They were under surveillance but somehow slipped away about an hour ago. Anthony sat up straight. They know we're coming, almost certainly. We've issued alerts to all airports, train stations, and state borders. But these are experienced police officers. They know how to disappear if they want to. What about Thompson and Harrison? Still under surveillance, no unusual movement. We're moving up their arrest to midnight as a precaution. Anthony considered the implications. Reynolds and Decker are the weak links. Without their testimony, Thompson and Harrison have more deniability. Exactly, Chen agreed. They might be running or Thompson is tying up loose ends, Anthony finished the thought. Either way, we need to find them. Chen nodded grimly. I've authorized emergency cell phone tracking, but there's something else you should know. Before they disappeared, Reynolds made one last call, to your home number. Anthony felt ice in his veins. Vanessa? She's fine, Chen assured him quickly. We sent agents to your house as soon as we discovered the call. She's being brought here now as a precaution.